Snake Cottage, or Snottage, by Quilly. Chapter 3. Stopped. Crowley was in the garden when he felt it. At first he thought it was just a ripple, some kind of involuntary body reaction to a sudden chill or some such. He yanked another couple of weeds out, then happened to glance at a very intrusive butterfly that had been flapping about his head for the past half-hour. It was frozen in flight, its wings flashing butter yellow in the sun, but utterly motionless. Then he heard the screaming. "Father! Father! Come quick! Father!" Miracle discretion be damned. Crowley was in the garden 1 second, and the next to hysterical Rosa and Datura. Rosa was sobbing, Datura pale, both with fully snaked-out eyes, which hadn't happened since Crowley taught them his trick of keeping them more human-looking around others. "What's wrong? What is it?" Crowley demanded, and Datura took off like a shot the way they'd come. There was a stream back there that opened into a pond. If Crowley remembered correctly, it was quite a nice little watering hole for the community. Junior can't swim!" Rosa gasped between her exertion from running and terrified sobs. "Angelica! We don't know. She did something. Junior's drowning!" "Get a Xerophil," Crowley ordered, and shoved Rosa towards the house before running at full speed behind his other child leading the way. He outstripped them easily, feeling the pulse of some kind of power at work, something uniquely flavored, not infernal, not divine, something in between, something new. Crowley had caught whiffs of it whenever the kids were transformed, or made some minor adjustment to their corporations. Bodies, they were bodies. But he never felt this strongly before. He noticed things frozen in time, a bird, a dog, leaves stuck between the trees and the ground, and as he approached the pond, even the flow of water had stopped. He didn't see Clem anywhere, but he did see Angelica, who looked like she was trying to hold something heavy, and in the center of the pond, one hand above the surface. Walking on water was nothing. Crowley had done it in his sleep. Oh, what a night that had been. Angelica was screaming, a high-pitched, ceaseless thing she surely didn't have the breath to keep sustaining, but did. And Crowley would address that as soon as Junior's head was back above water. He grasped Junior's hand, gritted his teeth against the placid pond water, and pulled. Junior came up gasping and coughing, vomiting water and clinging to Crowley's shirt. Crowley, for his part, was unwilling to let Junior go, but that locus of strange power was centered right on Angelica, still screaming, buckling under whatever she was doing. Time, Crowley realized with horror. She was stopping time. He bolted back to the shore, set Junior down as carefully as he could on his side, and knelt in front of Angelica, who was morphing from screaming to crying as soon as she saw him. I can't put it down," she choked, her limbs trembling. It was so fast, it needed to stop, and it did, and I can't put it down, Father, I can't put it down." "Angelica, listen to me," Crowley said urgently, taking her face in his hands. You can do this, you just have to do it slowly, but you can do it." He could feel it now, her tiny little life force stuck like a pin in the folds of the ticking seconds, keeping this part of the world out of step with the rest. Crowley had learned the trick early on, and had figured out how to steal a few moments here and there without wrecking the time-space continuum. But he never thought he'd have to teach the trick to someone else, let alone coach them through undoing it without snapping themselves. Crowley closed his eyes and let his essence do the work. She was trying so hard and doing so much, Crowley thought with tenderness. He could just take it from her. The burden wouldn't be too much for him, and he knew how to undo it safely, but she was locked into it too tightly, unable or unwilling to, as she put it, let down the flow of time into its natural state. Okay. Coaching it was, if he couldn't do it for her. "Relax," Crowley said, communicating soul to soul like he hadn't done with anyone else but Aziraphale since before his fall. He wished he'd had time to really appreciate the moment, but she was straining so hard. First step. Relax. Let the little nanoseconds go by first. "I can't," Angelica cried, her little soul writhing. Crowley infused as much comfort and confidence as he could into her. "Baby steps. Relax. Don't let go. Just relax." There was a heart-stopping second at a time where Crowley thought she couldn't do it, where he thought there was a good chance he was about to lose her. Unpacking that later. Shove it down. Focus. After a beat, 2, 3, Angelica uncoiled some, and the smallest increments of time started to flow. Gently, just like that, Crowley said, and bit by bit Angelica loosened her hold on time itself, uncorking herself from its flow and winding down into her body and safely out of harm's way. Abruptly the sounds of summer exploded around them, but Crowley had his hands full as Angelica swayed woozily. "Tired," she mumbled, and popped into her snake form, laying limp as a noodle in the grass. Behind him, Crowley was vaguely aware of activity, but his eyes were riveted on Angelica's scales, gleaming faintly in the sun. Like a majority of her siblings, she was solid black, but now there was a small patch of white right on top of her head, almost like a star. Crowley reached out with shaking hands and gathered Angelica's coils into his arms, somehow making it to his feet and turning around. Aziraphale was there, thank somebody, with Clem wrapped around his shoulders and Datura and Rosa clinging to each other by his side as he rubbed Junior's back and arms. Aziraphale looked up at him, then picked Junior up, holding him close to his chest. "Back to the house," Aziraphale said, and led the way. Crowley was barely conscious of the walk. Crowley sat on the couch, numb as Aziraphale took over, settling Datura and Rosa and Clem down with cups of cocoa and books, tending to a hyperventilating and cold Junior, healing him, warming him, telling him how much he was loved and how glad Aziraphale was that he was safe. Crowley couldn't take his eyes off Angelica, still lifeless in his arms but for the weak rise and fall of her breathing. "Crowley," Aziraphale said softly, and Crowley still flinched, hunching protectively over his daughter and snarling before he came back to himself. Aziraphale's hands on his face helped. "You've done so well, darling. Let me do the rest." "She stopped time," Crowley said dumbly, and Aziraphale gently lifted Angelica from his lap. "She stopped it. Almost got lost in it. It was too much for her." "She's still here," Aziraphale said, and shuffled Angelica into one arm, while he used the other to tilt Crowley's chin up, so they were making eye contact. "Crowley, she's still here. We're all here. You saved them." Crowley opened his mouth to reply, but couldn't. Aziraphale stroked his cheek with his thumb, then walked away, presumably to put Angelica under a heat lamp until she woke up. Crowley's lap felt empty, right up until Junior crawled into it, wrapped in a blanket and hair still damp. Crowley didn't think twice about wrapping Junior up into his arms. "Thank you," Junior said softly. Crowley felt his throat close up, and eyes burned and just squeezed him. Not too hard, but enough for Junior not to be able to wriggle away so easily if he so chose. It seemed as he had no inclination of going anywhere, just sniffling now and then. Aziraphale came back downstairs with a tired smile. "She's all snug in her tank, sleeping away. She just needs rest, and she'll be all right." Crowley jerked a nod. Aziraphale sat on the other side of the couch, and immediately was beset upon by the rest of the children, who crammed themselves into the space between Crowley and Aziraphale with little regard for physics or personal space. "There now, my dear ones," Aziraphale said soothingly. "We've all had a terrible fright, but it's all right. We're all safe and well." "Too deep," Junior hiccuped. "Thought it wasn't, but it was." "We can swim like this," Clem said quietly. "I thought it was okay the other way, too." "It takes a little more practice, but it can be done," Aziraphale said. There was a soft whoosh as his wings came out, encompassing the whole of the couch. They needed preening, Crowley noticed, but they were still warm and fluffy and safe. "Now, we're going to let Angelica sleep, and when she's awake and well, we're going to talk about appropriate uses of power." "How did she do it?" Datura asked. "I don't know," Aziraphale replied. "Your father's done it a couple of times, but the last was under duress." "Father is powerful," Rosa said in soft awe, and Crowley almost laughed. He didn't feel very powerful at the moment. "And so is Angelica." "I told you so," Aziraphale said with a gentle smile. "You are all remarkable, and I'm proud of all of you." The wing closest to Crowley's head gently brushed his hair, and he heard the unspoken, "especially you," in the action. In general, the children slept a normal amount for whichever form they were occupying at the time. They were mostly diurnal, though Rosa was certainly making a go of never sleeping like her Aziraphale, and mostly regular in their sleeping schedules. Angelica slept for 3 days straight. The tension in the house was palpable. If anyone was more miserable than Crowley, it was Junior, who alternated between not leaving Angelica's room and sitting just outside of it with his head on his knees. Crowley spent every night clinging to Aziraphale with everything he had, and Aziraphale clutched him back, mostly saying nothing, but occasionally pressing warm kisses into his hair. Crowley was sure he left bruises from how tightly he held his angel, but Aziraphale never complained.